Okay, so tell me y'all caught what just happened. Please tell me I'm not the only one that caught what just happened with the latest episode of Bleach, Season 3, Episode 2, aka 28. Because this episode of Bleach really did something that it's kind of fascinating to even think about in terms of the main villain, Yhwach, and his battle against Ichigo and everything that transpired with the Soul King and whatnot. Like, I can't be the only one. Like, bro, this is absolutely crazy what just went down. Because for the most part, this episode of Bleach was pretty much action-packed. It was straight up Ichigo throwing hands with Bach and a lot of crazy insanity ensuing with them kind of having their final battle. This essentially is the beginning of the final fight of the Bleach series as a whole, because this is of course the final chapter of Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War. But the way it was done, the way it maneuvered, and the way it positioned Yhwach, the main villain of Bleach as it stands right now, is fascinating to say the least, because we've seen throughout Bleach up until of course the Fullbring arc. Prior to that was when Aizen was defeated, and we've seen how slowly but surely, as a main villain, as the antagonist of the entirety of Bleach up until that point, Aizen was crafted to be this intelligent, 10 steps ahead of the main protagonist type of dude. It was just like we got it gradually, but I feel like this episode in general kind of emphasized and encompassed a lot of what we had gotten with Aizen as a villain, and it was kind of utilized to propel Yhwach into being a strategist, and a lot of the traits and qualities that we loved of Aizen and we appreciated and we praised of him being a villain, it was done very well with this episode and building Yhwach into being this mastermind villain that we accredited Aizen, and Aizen definitely was that. But yeah, what he did in this episode and what we saw in this episode, it was crazy. And before we continue, if you would hit that subscribe button and that bell, I'd greatly appreciate it. You get more anime and manga videos in your subscription box, and yeah, we all win. Because the episode started off very much so symbolic, very much so Tite Kubo-esque, of not really telling you exactly what's happening, but based off of the last episode, you kind of got to use some context clues, and even still it felt very abstract, because the last episode ends off with of course Bach proclaiming he's, getting rid of the Soul King, and that the Soul King was his father. And so this episode picks up with us getting what seemingly is potentially a flashback of Bach when he was younger, and it was again very abstract, very Tite Kubo, just giving you art and letting you interpret some of it to a certain degree. Obviously it was basically Bach when he was younger and kind of showcasing him going from young to older and giving you an abstract idea of how he feels about the Soul King. Because you got to imagine, if the Soul King is Bach's indeed true father or whatnot, then what would make him kind of go to the lengths that he's going right now and do everything that he did? What would make him go even back in the 1,000-Year Blood War, the first war that we had? Why would Bach do any of this? Why would Bach be doing this right now if that is his father? Clearly there's some sort of bad blood between the two, and a part of me wishes it would have been a little bit more clearer in the beginning and it would have got cleared up. And I believe, because again, my memory, it's been so long since I read the manga, I can't remember if we get all the details, but it would have been interesting to get just a little bit more details, a little bit more breadcrumbs in the beginning of this episode when we're seeing a young Yhwach, and understand what went wrong and what made him go rogue to go up against the Soul King right now. I mean, granted, later on in the episode it kind of leans more into essentially the Quincy were casted out, and despite the fact that the Soul King could foresee things that were about to occur, he still allowed for what happened to the Quincy to inevitably happen. But at the same time, if the Quincy were going savagely against the Soul Reapers, then what could the Soul King do other than for whatever was about to transpire with the battle between the Quincy and the Soul Reapers to occur? So it kind of seems to lean more into a revenge type of angle, but that's not even what I was talking about in the beginning of this video. Because while yes, that's a part of it, of setting things up, a Bach's character, this episode just demonstrated that this dude is a mastermind, and at the same time he is absolutely broken, because he's throwing down with Ichigo, and Ichigo is actually kind of giving a little bit of work. It seems as though Ichigo's actually getting the upper hand in certain regards, and we see that he's using working in unison with Orihime, which shout outs to this episode really giving you a lot of the characters that you love from Bleach being a part of this final fight already, from Orihime jumping in and healing Ichigo mid-attack to seeing Yoruichi use some of that black girl magic, you dig? With a combo attack against Bach, seeing Rukia worried about him, although I ain't gonna lie, was it just me or did it feel a little bit like Renji was on some, yo, why you worried about that fool? Renji right here, boy, you dig? I'm just saying, if you read the light novels and you know what happens in the future, Renji was kinda, yo, bro, what you got, bro? And I'm just saying, bro, what we doing here? But again, I just appreciated seeing all of the people, or a good chunk of the people of the cast of Bleach that we enjoy and love throughout the entirety of the series being involved in this episode in one form or another, whether it just be support from afar, support from up close, or in unison combat techniques to try and take Bach down. And with all of that being said, it kind of was for naught. It seemed as though essentially Bach was just kind of playing with Ichigo and doing all of this to lead Ichigo to do what Bach wanted him to do to begin with. Because again, you would assume that, yo, Bach is throwing his all, he's trying to take him down, this is the Quincy Rebellion, he ain't playing, but it seems as though he wasn't playing, but at the same time still playing possum. Because shortly after Ichigo drops Bach and you're thinking like, wow, okay, Ichigo is all powered up, Bach starts monologuing and he's basically like, bruh, this seems as though you've gotten powered up by training in the Soul Palace. That is cool, dog, but you know what? It still ain't enough, fam. Because he reveals that, yo, have you noticed I haven't been using my ocular powers? Remember, Bach has 3 pupils on one eye and 3 pupils on another, and it's not just for show. It's not just an aesthetic choice that Bach was like, yo, I just wanted to put on some contacts, you dig? Because it seems to be a part of his powers. Shortly after that, he showcases to Ichigo, yeah, when I start using these eyes, it's a different ball game. And eventually he peers behind Ichigo and puts his palm on Ichigo's face, and it looks like he was forcing Ichigo into that Blute Bane look, and leads into something even more devastating. Because we know that Ichigo is a character with a very strong conscience. He doesn't like to do wrong, even if it's not by choice. He is very much so on the up and up and tries to do his best to do the right thing. So to have his hand forced in what Bach made him do in this episode is something that not only is maniacal, methodical, like Bach already is a force to be reckoned with. We've seen everything he's done thus far in the Quincy invasion, but to take it to this psychological level that he did with Ichigo is otherworldly. Because Bach reveals to them, look over there to the Soul King, look closely. He had already pierced the Soul King with his sword, which prompts Ichigo to go and remove the sword, which I was thinking to myself, bro, maybe when I was younger I wouldn't think all the way through, but like, you removing the sword is going to make the Soul King bleed out, so why would you, like, you know what I mean? But again, Ichigo is at the end of the day still, what, 17, something in that ballpark, so I cut him some slack, and at the same time it's a shocking moment, like, bro, I need to remove this immediately. And little does he know that, again, one of the things throughout this episode, we're seeing that Bach is just methodical, and this was all according to plan all along on some Aizen stuff. Because after removing the sword from the Soul King, Ichigo then suddenly seems to be under some sort of control, and he slices the Soul King in half, essentially finishing the job and destroying what appears to be potentially all of reality based on what was said prior to this. Because we know essentially the Soul King is the glue that holds everything together, and Bach basically made it that Ichigo is responsible for destroying everything because he did it with his own hands. Even if it wasn't by choice, he's still the one that sliced the Soul King in half. Therefore, yeah, I can only imagine what that's going to do to Ichigo's conscience, and I'm only going to imagine what is going to transpire next in terms of just how Ichigo maneuvers, and just in general seeing Bach being built up like this. It's crazy that in one episode it demonstrated that Bach is not the character that you think he is, in terms of he is not playing checkers, he is playing chess, and he's playing it from a different dimension altogether. Because just like that, essentially it was kind of like a checkmate moment, and it was almost as if he basically guided Ichigo's hands to playing the wrong position with his pieces. And overall, this episode, it was insanely good art and animation yet again. No need to stress, it was just beautifully done, especially the art. Studio Pierrot, just, they know what they're doing. From all the shots of Ichigo, when we get key frames, they look just gorgeous. They really did their thing. But let me know what you thought of this episode. How do you feel about Ichigo being the one to cut the Soul King down? Also, how do you feel about Ichibei saying while he stood behind that basically this is a battle that Ichigo and the humans can't win? So then why the heck did you send them there to begin with, dog? Like, there had to be another way, but I guess maybe maybe it was a kind of stall for time thing. Although he did throw in that this is how peace happens, so there's that. And your expectations for the next episode. That's all I have for this one. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. Subscribe and hit that bell to get more. Thank you so much.
You say I'm not your type, I'm not the kind of dude you're looking for in your life. Girl, you best believe me, one day you gon' need me. When you're mad out of sight and you need a night, I'm not the type.